and welcome to AWSome Paws. My name is Lona and this is Bobby, and we're from the Animal Welfare Society in Kennebunk. We have with us today a couple of our transfer puppies. We're going to talk about our transfer program at the shelter, and we're going to talk about kitten season, which has hit the shelter fairly recently, and it's going to last throughout the summer. These two particular dogs are from what state?
These guys are from Georgia.
And they're Basset mixes. We're not quite sure what they're mixed with. We've got a couple of different guesses to what they are.
It said maybe Basset Hound and Boston Terrier, so
yeah,
definitely Basset Hound.
Because of the black and white Boston Terrier thing doesn't work for me. But in any case, they're adorable. We're already in love with these guys. And they're pretty typical of the transfers that we've been seeing, puppies. So we want to talk a little bit about that. When did that program actually start?
We started accepting dogs from out of state in 2002. And since then, we've accepted over 1,000 dogs into the program. And these are all dogs from high-volume shelters in the Midwest and southern states that are just swimming in puppies and very, very highly adoptable, good family dogs, and they just don't have enough homes for them, and just such a vast surplus of great dogs.
Right. You hear a lot about the shelters in the South and their overpopulation problem. We still have that problem with cats, but not so much with dogs, right? Because we've been on the spay-neuter thing a little bit longer with the dogs in Maine. But we found that there was a demand for puppies that we didn't often have at the shelter. Families coming in looking for, or even young dogs, or,
Exactly. I think it's really important to point out that we don't displace local dogs with our program. We're fortunate in New England to end up with empty kennel spaces. And an empty kennel space is just really a wasted resource if we're not using it. And I think it meets a lot of demands. Obviously, these animals like to have a shot at life because ultimately the sad fact is that there are so many of them in these southern and midwestern shelters that literally puppies are being euthanized by the litter.
Including these.
These dogs actually were not considered adoptable by the shelter that they were in.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I said, just, send me whatever you don't think that you can place, that we can place. And she said, oh, I've got a couple puppies. I'm like, no, send me something you don't think that you can adopt, that we can adopt. And she said, yeah, I have these two puppies that need to go somewhere. So that's why they are now in Maine. And they're great people. The people that work in these shelters are wonderful, committed, loving people, and they're just really trying to do the best job that they can do, and they cannot handle the volume of puppies and dogs that are coming into their shelters. Can't stop it.
So basically it started because there's such a demand up here and that there's too many down there. I can't imagine working in a shelter. That must be so hard down there where there's just
very hard. They definitely do see a ray of hope when there are shelters that partner with them to take the surplus and help them out. And what's important also to mention is that we work with shelters that have a spay-neuter incentive program. We're not just the Band-Aid to help solve, to cover up the problem. They actually have to be actively working to stem the tide of dogs that's coming into their shelter.
Which is why
there for spay-neuter.
On our adoption fee for transfers, there is a surcharge, right? Like a transportation charge.
Yeah.
We help with some of their spay-neuter program?
We do. We send back to the shelters that have these programs some of the money that we collect with the surcharge to help offset spay-neuter in their community. And then there is, as you mentioned, the transfer surcharge because they cost the shelter money to bring up. It costs money in gas and tolls. These are usually volunteer drivers that are taking their time to drive these dogs.
I was going to say, exactly how does that work? Do they drive them all the way up, or are there different?
The ones that are being driven are driven straight through. It's a straight shot all the way from one shelter to another with pit stops along the way so they can let the dogs go to the bathroom and feed them and water them and check on everybody's health. Usually they stop every 4 hours or so. And then there is a group in Mississippi that uses volunteer pilots, and they will fly the dogs in these little legs all the way from Mississippi to Maine.
That's been fun because a couple of times I've picked dogs up at the airport with the work van, and they're so cute because they come in these little tiny planes, and a lot of them, they'll have so many for the little tiny planes that they won't be able to fit all the crates, so they're actually loose, and as the plane's in the sky landing, you can see little paws. Oh, it's so cute. I have to bring a camera one of these times. So the last time it was so cute. They had like a little retriever puppy or whatever looking out the window. And they're really nice guys, and they're really just glad to be able to help and save lives, truly. What states do we take them from?
Right now we're taking dogs from Tennessee, Indiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi.
Southern states. And I just want to stress again, most people are you know, totally for this program, realize, especially like, you know, people that are watching that get to see actually what would be euthanized or something. But a lot of people question, you mentioned briefly that our dogs suffering, or what about the dogs from Maine, and are we doing them a disservice by, you know,
Well, we certainly do put Maine dogs as a higher priority, even though these guys are cute and adorable. Maine dogs come first, they truly do. We've had shelters in Maine that have been in a crunch where they all of a sudden are, you know, swimming in dogs, and they'll call and ask us if we could take a couple. And we have absolutely worked with local shelters, the Greater Androscoggin Humane Society in Lewiston, Animal Refuge League in Westbrook, and the same works for us. If we all of a sudden end up with a lot of local dogs being surrendered and another local shelter has some empty space, we'll, you know, move dogs throughout the state to just spread everybody around and help each other out.
Other shelters in Maine also do the transfer program too,
They
right?
do, yeah. There are a lot of other Maine shelters that are participating, and some of them choose not to. But there's definitely a place for these guys in Maine.
And what's done, like, health-wise to assure, a lot of people are concerned with that, like with different viruses being transported, because in the South, obviously they have a little bit different health issues than some of the dogs.
That is a risk that we take, absolutely, when we're importing animals. They're definitely bringing their bugs and their germs. We do follow Maine's protocols for quarantine, and we actually quarantine in addition to what Maine requires. We have a 7-day quarantine policy for all transfer dogs. We will only accept dogs that have been vaccinated at least 14 days before they come into the state, so they're coming to us hopefully very healthy. They all have a health certificate that's performed by a vet in their state before they leave. So they're coming to us fully vaccinated, tested for heartworm, and with valid health certificates, and then they're quarantined for an additional week. So we're doing our best to make sure that we're not going to be spreading any germs to local animals.
And they get quarantined in the big section of our shelter. We ask that people be really patient too. Now that the word is out that we have transfers and that we get them quite often, a lot of people want to see them before they're available, and there are reasons that we don't allow people to see them before they're available, and that is because they're I always get the bad ones on this show, you notice? I lost my train of thought. And that's for health reasons and safety reasons. It's important that they spend their time, that we can observe and make sure
we don't want these guys to be quarantined in an area with heavy foot traffic. We want them to be in a section that is not going to be a very busy area where people are going to look. And then plus, if I walked into a shelter, if I saw this puppy, I would instantly fall in love, as I already have done, and I would have my heart set on that puppy.
Right.
And so that's another problem for us, is that there's only one, or there's only two. You know, there's only 15, and we have 70 people that want them.
Right.
So we really stress that, you know, keep an eye on the website, that when you see the puppies available, make plans to get there as soon as you can.
They do go on the website, 48 hours before they're available, with the date and time that they will be available?
Sometimes 24, depending. Usually we try and get them on with 24 hours notice so people can make plans. And we have actually had people camp out. This is the demand that there is in New England for puppies from shelters is pretty significant, that we have people waiting sometimes overnight in their cars with their children so they can be first in line for the dog of their choice.
And it works out nice. I mean, our placement rate is huge, and it brings in foot traffic into the shelter. So very often people have come in to look at a transfer puppy, fallen in love with one of our older dogs, or
a local dog. Sometimes we've had people come in to adopt a transfer puppy, and they met with the puppies and decided, you know what, maybe they're not ready for a puppy, but while they were waiting, they happened to wander through the cat rooms. They ended up adopting a pair of our longer term resident cats instead. But they'd come in because they saw a puppy online and they planned on adopting that puppy. So it definitely helps.
I don't know what else we're going to talk about now.
You know, the last time I ripped up your sheet, you got mad at me.
Anything, because we're busy. She wants her brother so bad. But we're not requiring that they go together, although that would be really
great.
huge. But once in a while, when we get a bonded older pair, we recommend that they go together. When we came into the studio, someone asked if they needed to go together, and they certainly don't, although she loves her brother a lot. So the program's been a huge success.
It has.
And as far as the dogs that are already living at the shelter from Maine, you haven't seen any, you know, our adoption rate is still really strong with those. So anybody that has any questions on the transfers, we have a lot of information. We always mention our website, pictures of dogs that are available. These guys, just to let everyone know, I mean, there's going to be a huge demand for these. No, we can't hold them for anybody. No one can see them before their quarantine period is up. But there are a lot of great dogs. These are just the two that we happen to grab today, but we could have easily grabbed two different ones and fallen just as hard in love with those. And I want to touch a little bit on cats and kittens. Nobody's